Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. It is late July, and we are continuing our coverage of college football conferences with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Guys, been doing this professionally for almost 30 years. We're going to start with the Conference USA East. Joe Duffy, how you doing right now?
Absolutely fantastic. It's been a great baseball run as we file this report, but people are going to be watching this, I'm sure for weeks and months after we recorded this. It's going to be an even better football season.
Well, the Conference USA East Division, let's start off with just the top two powerful teams in the conference, Marshall and Western Kentucky. Both these teams actually very strong on offense, decent on defense, but the strength is clearly offense. I've got both of them circled as teams I'm going to be looking for overs with, and I guess ATS covers as well, although, their strength is not going to surprise anyone. Western Kentucky in particular is going to have one of the top offenses of the season, and Marshall is going to have to place Rakeem Cato, but they've got this guy Birdsong at quarterback who's a huge 6'5" quarterback. Looks like he's going to be, very capable, and he's going to have a lot of skill players at wide receiver and running back. The return game looks strong. Defense did suffer some big losses from Marshall. So in general, I think I'm looking for overs more than anything else, Marshall and Western Kentucky. What do you think about that, Joe?
I agree with you. Look, in Western Kentucky, it's going to be one of those cases. Can they actually make the totals high enough? Kind of like Bowling Green earlier last year, where they would put the totals in the 70s and we would bet it up, 5 or 6 points, and it would still go over the total. They've got to be very careful. They start putting it in the 80s, then all the sharps are going to be betting on the under. So I think Western Kentucky is going to be a big challenge, but I do think they will be certainly a high total, but also a high total team where it's going to be going over the total because they snap the ball very quickly. Brandon Daugherty, sixth season because of a medical red shirt. He threw for 4,830 yards last year. Leon Allen, a very good running back, 3 starters on their offensive line. So I think there are going to be a lot of games in the 80s.
What do you think about them from an ATS perspective? I mean, they're great teams, but the spreads are going to be big, right?
They do have some guys on defense back. Their top 4 tacklers on defense are back. Now, again, they're not going to have very good defensive statistics. What do I say time and time again? That when you handicap totals and when you're talking about total yards given up and total points, that's based much more on pace than it is offensive or defensive competence. So Western Kentucky, they're going to have a better defense than these statistics would indicate. So it's going to look like they're vulnerable on defense. And, as a general rule of thumb, because remember, college football, as I've said, it's the only sport in which we have great systems, statistically significant systems that either have a Z-score of 4.5 or higher or have 70 units, 80 units or higher, in which it says to go with the big favorite. And look, they are going to have delusions, Western Kentucky is, and Marshall, until one of them loses a game. They're going to have delusions of being that fly-in-the-ointment team that can sneak into the Final Four. Whether or not they truly can is highly debatable, but they're going to play as if they can, and I think as long as these teams are undefeated, they're going to be going for style points.
Okay, and then is there anything else that's caught your eye from the rest of the Conference USA East? I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, there's a bunch of teams with particularly weak offenses in this league, but defenses that are a little bit better, and kind of like bad teams with defenses that are the strength. Those kinds of teams I look for unders and ATS losses with, and I'm thinking that Middle Tennessee State, Florida Atlantic, and maybe a Florida International as well will be 2 of those teams. And then Old Dominion and Charlotte are 2 teams that try to stay in games with high-powered up-tempo offenses, and that and basically on defense can't stop anyone. So that results in very high-scoring games as well. So I'm thinking about overs with Charlotte and Old Dominion, unders with Middle Tennessee State and Florida Atlantic, and probably Florida International, and then probably ATS losses with Florida International, Charlotte, Old Dominion, a bunch of these teams, although I guess when they play each other, someone's got to get the covers. What's your take on the rest of Conference USA East?
Well, NTSU is a team that has the quarterback battle, and most importantly, they have, the 2 guys that are opposites, where Austin Grammer is that dual threat, and Brent Stockstill, who is the son of the coach, he does have a better arm. So I think if Stockstill is the quarterback, they might be more of an over team, but Grammer, they'd be a little bit more of an under team because he's going to use his legs to kind of keep the play alive, and that can eat up the clock. They're not very deep at defensive back, though, so keep in mind teams might decide to pass against them, but then conversely, they're a better running team than they are a wide receiving team. So I really think it has to do with, let's see who wins the quarterback battle and see if they're going to be throwing downfield a little bit more or whether they're going to go with more of the option game.
All right, and then Charlotte and Old Dominion, I see them as very similar teams that are probably, obviously not going to win a lot of games, probably going to get blown out a lot of ATS losses, but more importantly, probably overs, because again, they play up-tempo offensively and defensively. They just don't really have the personnel to stop anyone. You think we're going to see overs from Old Dominion and Charlotte?
I think if anything, Charlotte might be a team that would be good in the first half, but not so much in the second half of games, where people like to bet those first and second half lines, because Charlotte is pretty good frontline talent, and emotion can carry you a certain can carry you so far. And the fact that they're playing their first year in Division, what we used to call the Division 1A, the football championship series that they call it now, that's going to carry them. But they have so little depth, and the fact that they're going to have so many snaps, you need depth. So I think they're a team that could be very good at halftime, but really wear down. And you're right, when they do wear down, that means they're going to give up a lot of points. So I think they could be an over team, but especially in second halves of games. Maybe you might want to even look towards the first half under and then the second half over for sure. And if you like that live betting, if it looks like they're on pace to go way under, maybe bet the live betting over.
Excellent insights, Joe Duffy. So let's just sum up with Conference USA East. We know that Marshall and Western Kentucky are the cream of the crop in the East, and particularly on offense, they're impressive. What are your general primary check marks as of right now for the Conference USA East?
Yeah, and Florida Atlantic is another team. They lost more than half of their wide receiver production. You did say that, I believe they were one of the teams you said that could be an under team, but I do think, look, people like to bet favorites, and probably, as I said, because of these style points that are Western Kentucky and Marshall, until they lose a game, they probably will be some of the better big favorites in the country to bet, because they got to win every game by 30, 40 points to really get any attention.
Can't say I disagree with that, especially on offense. They can cover big spreads against teams that don't put up much defensively. Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Thanks so much.